At 57, I thought I'd weathered the worst storms life could throw at me. I'd buried my wife of 30 years, survived a heart attack, and rebuilt my contracting business from the ground up twice. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the words that came out of my daughter Sarah's mouth that cold February morning. "Dad, I don't think it's healthy for the kids to be around you right now." I was standing in her kitchen, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold while she paced back and forth, her arms crossed tight against her chest. 8-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Jake were upstairs, probably wondering why Grandpa's weekend visit felt so tense. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I asked, though something deep in my gut already knew this wasn't going to be a conversation I'd walk away from unchanged. Sarah stopped pacing and looked at me with eyes that held no warmth. "I mean, I think you need to work on yourself before you can be part of their lives. The drinking, Dad. The way you just check out sometimes. They notice things." The coffee cup trembled in my hands. "Sarah, I have a glass of wine with dinner. Maybe 2 on weekends." "I'm not. It's not just the drinking," she interrupted, her voice rising. "It's everything. You've been different since Mom died. Distant. Angry. Yesterday, Emma asked me why Grandpa doesn't smile anymore. That hit me like a punch to the solar plexus. Emma, my little sunshine girl who could make me laugh even on my darkest days. The thought that she'd noticed my pain, that it was affecting her innocent world, made my chest tighten. "I'm grieving, Sarah. It's been 2 years, but 2 years of you slowly disappearing," she said, tears now streaming down her face. "I can't watch it anymore, and I won't let the kids watch it either. I think you need professional help, and until you get it, I don't want you around them." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I wanted to argue, to fight back, to tell her she was wrong. But as I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, I saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the way her shoulders sagged with the weight of worry she'd been carrying. I set down the coffee cup and nodded. Just nodded. "Okay," I said quietly. The surprise on her face told me she'd been bracing for a battle. "Okay. If that's what you think is best for Emma and Jake, then okay." I kissed her forehead, grabbed my jacket, and walked out of that house without saying goodbye to my grandchildren. The drive home was a blur of tears and rage and a hollow emptiness that seemed to swallow everything good I'd ever known. That night, alone in the house where Margaret and I had raised Sarah, I sat in my recliner with a bottle of whiskey and truly understood what rock bottom felt like. The first week without my grandchildren felt like trying to breathe underwater. Every morning, I'd wake up expecting to hear Emma's laugh echoing through the house or see Jake's gap-toothed grin asking me to make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Instead, I was greeted by silence so profound it seemed to have weight. I'd always been a man of action. When Margaret got sick, I researched every treatment, drove her to every appointment, held her hand through every chemo session. When the business started failing during the recession, I worked 18-hour days and personally visited every client to keep us afloat. But this felt different. This felt like a problem I couldn't fix with determination and elbow grease. On the 8th day, I called Dr. Patricia Hendricks, a therapist Margaret had seen briefly during her cancer treatment. She'd always spoken highly of Dr. Hendricks, said she was someone who didn't just listen but actually helped you understand yourself. "Frank Morrison," I said when she answered. "I think I need help." The appointment was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I spent the weekend cleaning the house obsessively, as if scrubbing the baseboards could somehow scrub away the mess I'd made of everything. I found myself talking to Margaret's photograph on the mantel, something I'd avoided doing for months. "She thinks I'm broken, Maggie," I said to the picture of my wife on our 25th anniversary. And you know what? Maybe she's right. Dr. Hendricks' office was nothing like I'd expected. No leather couch, no clipboard with probing questions. Just 2 comfortable chairs facing each other and walls lined with books that looked like they'd actually been read. She was younger than I'd imagined, maybe 45, with kind eyes and the sort of calm presence that made you feel like whatever you said wouldn't shock her. "Tell me why you're here, Frank." So I did. I told her about Sarah's ultimatum, about the nights I'd spent drinking alone, about the way I'd stopped caring about things that used to matter to me. I told her about the anger that seemed to bubble up from nowhere, about the way I'd snap at store clerks or honk at other drivers for minor infractions. "When did this start?" she asked. "When Margaret died," I said automatically, then paused. "No, that's not right. It started before that, during her illness." I think I was just so focused on taking care of her that I didn't notice I was falling apart. What does falling apart look like for you? I thought about that for a long moment. It looks like going through the motions. Like being physically present but emotionally somewhere else. Like watching my life happen to someone else. Dr. Hendricks nodded. Grief isn't just about sadness, Frank. It's about reorganizing your entire understanding of the world. When someone central to your life dies, especially after 30 years of marriage, your brain has to rebuild its entire framework for how life works. Sarah thinks I drink too much. Do you? Another pause. Honesty had never been my strong suit when it came to my own flaws. Probably. Not enough to be falling down drunk, but enough to numb things. Enough to sleep without dreaming. And the anger? I'm angry at everything, I admit it. At God for taking her. At Margaret for leaving me. At myself for not being able to handle it better. At Sarah for not understanding. At the world for just continuing on like nothing happened. It was the most honest I'd been with anyone, including myself, since Margaret's funeral. Therapy, I discovered, was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd expected to lie on a couch and talk about my mother or my childhood fears. Instead, Dr. Hendricks had me doing practical exercises that felt more like mental calisthenics than emotional hand-wringing. Grief is not a problem to be solved, she explained during our third session. It's a process to be experienced. The goal isn't to get over Margaret's death. It's to learn how to carry that love and loss in a way that doesn't poison everything else in your life. She had me keep a journal, which felt ridiculous at first. I'd never been much of a writer, preferring the straightforward language of construction blueprints and material orders. But gradually, putting my thoughts on paper began to feel like organizing a cluttered garage. Everything's still there, but finally in its proper place. March 15th. Went to Home Depot today and saw a display of spring flowers. Margaret always insisted on planting marigolds every year, even though I told her they were just going to die come winter. I used to think it was wasteful. Now I understand she wasn't planting them for permanence. She was planting them for the joy they brought while they lasted. Bought a flat of marigolds. Don't know if I'll have the courage to plant them. March 18th. Planted the marigolds in Margaret's garden. Cried like a baby, but they look beautiful. Emma would love them. She always helped Grandma with the flowers. Miss that little girl so much it physically hurts. March 22nd. Dr. Hendricks asked me what I was afraid of. Thought about it all week. I think I'm afraid that if I stop grieving, I'll forget Margaret. If I start living again, it means she's really gone. Stupid logic, but there it is. The drinking was harder to address than I'd expected. It wasn't that I couldn't stop. I could go days without a drink when I focused on it. But the evenings were the worst, when the house felt too big and too quiet, and the whiskey was the only thing that made the silence bearable. What did you and Margaret do in the evenings? Dr. Hendricks asked. Watched TV. Talked about our days. She'd read while I worked on crossword puzzles. Nothing special. But it was your routine. Your together time. I nodded. I haven't watched our shows since she died. Haven't touched a crossword puzzle either. What if we worked on rebuilding your evening routine? Not trying to recreate what you had with Margaret, but creating something new that honors both your need for peace and your sobriety. So I started small. Instead of heading straight for the liquor cabinet after dinner, I'd take a walk around the neighborhood. Margaret and I had always talked about doing that, but never made the time. The first few walks were torture. Every house reminded me of some story she'd told me about the neighbors. Every flowering tree was one she'd admired. But gradually, the walks became less about what I'd lost and more about what was still there. Mrs. Chun from down the street always waved from her garden. The Johnsons had gotten a new puppy that bounded up to the fence whenever I passed. The world was still turning, still full of small beauties and everyday kindnesses. April 2nd, 6 weeks since Sarah's ultimatum. Haven't called or tried to see the kids, but I think about them every day. Want to be the grandfather they deserve, not the broken man I've been. Starting to think maybe Sarah was right. Maybe I did need to fix myself first. 2 months after Sarah had essentially banished me from my grandchildren's lives, I ran into her at the grocery store. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was standing in the produce section, contemplating whether buying fresh vegetables constituted optimism or delusion when I heard Emma's voice. Grandpa, I turned to see my granddaughter racing toward me, her arms outstretched. My heart nearly exploded with joy as I scooped her up, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and feeling her small arms wrap around my neck. "I missed you so much," she whispered in my ear. "I missed you too, sunshine." When I looked up, Sarah was standing a few feet away with Jake, who seemed suddenly shy, hiding partially behind his mother's legs. Sarah's expression was unreadable, not angry, but not exactly welcoming either. "Hi, Dad." "Sarah." I set Emma down, but kept my hand on her shoulder, needing that connection. "How are you?" "Fine. We're fine." But her eyes told a different story. She looked tired, more tired than I'd ever seen her. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her usually perfect appearance seemed somewhat frayed around the edges. "Grandpa, why don't you come over anymore?" Emma asked, looking up at me with those big brown eyes that were so much like Margaret's. I glanced at Sarah, unsure how to answer. "Well, sweetheart, sometimes grown-ups need to take a little break to work on things." "What kind of things?" "Emma, we need to get going," Sarah interjected, but her voice lacked its usual authority. Jake finally emerged from behind his mother and walked over to me. "Grandpa, I learned to tie my shoes," he announced proudly. "Did you now?" I knelt down to his level. "Let me see." As he demonstrated his shoe-tying prowess, I couldn't help but notice Sarah watching us with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. When Jake finished, I applauded and he beamed with pride. "That's amazing, buddy. I'm so proud of you." "Mom says you're sick," Emma said suddenly. "Are you feeling better?" The directness of children never ceased to amaze me. I looked at Sarah again, then back at Emma. "I was sad for a long time, sweetheart. But I'm working on feeling better. I'm seeing a doctor who helps people with sadness. Like when I saw Dr. Williams when I was scared of the dark." "Exactly like that." Sarah cleared her throat. "We really do need to go. Kids, say goodbye to Grandpa." The goodbyes were harder than I'd expected. Emma hugged me fiercely, making me promise to get all better soon. Jake gave me a high five and asked if I still had the train set at my house. "It's right where you left it," I assured him. As they walked away, Sarah turned back. "Dad, yeah, you do look better. Different." "I'm trying, sweetheart." She nodded and continued walking, but I caught something in her expression, a crack in the wall she'd built between us. That evening, I called Dr. Hendricks, even though it wasn't a scheduled session day. "I saw them today," I said when she answered. "How did that feel?" "Complicated." "Good, but painful." Emma asked why I don't come over anymore. I didn't know what to say. "What did you want to say?" "I thought about that. That I love them more than my own life, and that I'm trying to become the grandfather they deserve. That their mom was right to protect them from the broken man I became, but I'm working on putting the pieces back together." "That sounds like something you could say to them when the time is right." Sarah looked exhausted, really tired. I wanted to ask if everything was okay, but I didn't think I had the right anymore. "Why don't you have the right to care about your daughter's well-being?" "Because I lost that right when I let my grief turn me into someone they needed protection from." "Frank, caring about someone isn't a right you can lose. It's not a privilege that gets revoked. You made mistakes, yes, but that doesn't mean you stop being a father and grandfather who loves his family." After we hung up, I sat in Margaret's garden among the marigolds I'd planted and thought about Sarah's tired eyes and Emma's fierce hug and Jake's proud demonstration of his new skill. Whatever was happening with Sarah, whatever was making her look so worn down, I wanted to help. But I also knew I had to be patient, had to trust that the work I was doing on myself would eventually rebuild the bridge between us. It was a Tuesday evening in late April when my phone rang. I was in the middle of making dinner. Actually making dinner, not just heating up a frozen meal or eating cereal straight from the box, when I saw Sarah's name on the caller ID. My hands were shaking as I answered. "Sarah? Dad?" Her voice sounded strange, strained. I need to ask you something, and I know I don't have the right after what I said, but..." "What is it, sweetheart?" There was a long pause, and I could hear her breathing, could sense her struggling with whatever she needed to say. Would you be willing to watch Emma and Jake this weekend? I know it's a lot to ask after everything, but I'm in a bind, and I don't have anyone else I trust with them." The relief that flooded through me was so intense I had to sit down. Of course I'll watch them. Are you okay?" Another pause. "I will be. I hope. It's just, things have been complicated lately." "What kind of complicated?" I asked, though I was careful to keep my voice gentle, not pushy. "Mark and we're having problems. He moved out last week, and this weekend he's supposed to have the kids, but now he's saying he can't take them because he's not in the right headspace." Her voice carried a bitterness I'd never heard before. Mark, Sarah's husband of 10 years, had always struck me as decent enough but somewhat self-centered. He worked in finance, made good money, but seemed to think that providing financially was the extent of his parental duties. I'm sorry, sweetheart. That must be incredibly difficult. I've been handling everything alone for weeks now, and I need a break. I need to think. But I can't do that with the kids around because they're already confused and upset about their dad being gone, and I'm trying so hard to keep it together for them, but I'm falling apart. Her voice broke on the last words, and I could hear her crying. Sarah, honey, of course I'll take the kids. For as long as you need. Just the weekend, she said quickly. I don't want to impose. You're not imposing. They're my grandchildren, and you're my daughter. This is what family does. But after what I said to you, what you said needed to be said, I interrupted. You were protecting your children from someone who wasn't healthy enough to take care of them properly. That took courage, and you were right to do it. I was so angry at you, she whispered. I know. I was angry at me too. Are you really better? I mean, I saw you at the store, and you seemed different, but I'm not the same man I was 2 months ago, I said carefully. I'm in therapy. I've been sober for 6 weeks, and I'm learning how to grieve without drowning everyone around me in my pain. I'm not perfect, and I'm still working on myself every day, but I'm stable. I'm safe for them to be around. 6 weeks sober? 6 weeks tomorrow. I heard her take a shaky breath. I didn't know it was that bad. The drinking, I mean. It wasn't falling down drunk bad, but it was numbing everything that mattered bad. You were right about that too. I felt like such a terrible daughter, cutting you off like that. But I didn't know what else to do. You were disappearing right in front of us, and the kids were starting to notice, and I was so scared that I was going to lose you too. After Mom died, it was like you died with her, and I couldn't bear the thought of Emma and Jake watching their grandfather just fade away. The truth of that hit me hard. In my self-absorption, I hadn't considered how my grief was affecting Sarah, who had lost her mother and was watching her father disappear into his pain. You didn't lose me, I said. I lost myself for a while, but I'm finding my way back. I want to believe that. Then let me show you. Let me watch the kids this weekend, and let me show you that I'm not the broken man I was 2 months ago. When we hung up, I looked around my house, really looked at it, for the first time in months. It was clean, which was a start, but it was also sterile, devoid of the warmth and life it had once held. If Emma and Jake were coming to stay, I needed to make it feel like a place where children were welcome and loved. I spent the rest of the evening child-proofing electrical outlets I'd forgotten about, stocking the refrigerator with their favorite foods, and setting up the train set in the living room. For the first time since Margaret died, my house was going to be filled with laughter and chaos and love. I couldn't wait. Friday afternoon arrived with a light rain that made everything smell fresh and new. I'd been awake since 5 in the morning, nervous energy coursing through me like electricity. I'd checked and double-checked everything. Snacks in the pantry, their favorite cereals, the TV queued up to their preferred cartoon channel, the train set arranged just the way Jake liked it. When Sarah's car pulled into my driveway at 4 o'clock, I felt like a teenager getting ready for a first date. Through the window, I could see Emma and Jake in the back seat, Emma reading a book and Jake playing with some kind of handheld game. I met them at the door, and the first few moments were awkward. Emma ran to me immediately, but Jake hung back, suddenly shy again. Sarah looked worse than she had at the grocery store, pale, thin, with the kind of exhaustion that sleep alone couldn't fix. Hey there, sunshine, I said, lifting Emma into a hug. I missed you. I missed you too, Grandpa. Mom said we get to stay the whole weekend. That's right. We're going to have so much fun. I looked over at Jake, who was still hiding behind his mother's leg. Hey, buddy. Want to see what I've got set up in the living room? His curiosity won out over his shyness, and he peeked around Sarah to look at me. Is it the trains? Might be. That was all it took. Jake bolted into the house, and I heard him gasp with delight when he saw the elaborate track system I'd spent 2 hours arranging. Mom, come look, he called. Sarah and Emma followed him inside, and I watched Sarah's face as she took in the changes I'd made to the house. The heavy curtains were gone, replaced with lighter ones that let in more sunshine. Margaret's photographs were still there, but they were mixed in with newer pictures, ones of the grandkids, ones of all of us together from happier times. The house looks good, Dad, she said quietly. It feels more like a home again, I replied. It stopped feeling like home when I stopped living in it. Emma had found the art supplies I'd set up at the kitchen table. Grandpa, can we make pictures for Mommy? Whatever you want to do, sweetheart. Sarah pulled me aside while the kids explored. I need to tell you some things before I go. Rules, I guess. Okay. Jake's been having nightmares since Mark left. If he wakes up scared, sometimes crawling into bed with someone helps. Emma's been acting out at school. Nothing terrible, just testing boundaries. And they both keep asking when Daddy's coming home. And I don't know what to tell them because I don't know myself. My heart ached for all of them. How long has this been going on? The problems with Mark? Months. But it got really bad about 6 weeks ago. He started staying late at work, going out with friends on weekends, acting like he was single. When I confronted him, he said he felt trapped and needed space to figure things out. So he moved out. I asked him to. I couldn't handle the uncertainty anymore. Couldn't handle the kids seeing us fight all the time. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I keep thinking I should have tried harder, should have done something different. Sarah, honey, you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. Trust me, I know something about that. She looked at me with surprise. Is that what happened with us? You didn't want to be fixed? I wanted to be fixed, but I wanted to do it on my own terms, in my own time. And I wanted everyone to just wait patiently while I figured it out. You didn't let me do that, and I'm grateful for it now. I felt so cruel, keeping the kids from you. You felt cruel because you're not a cruel person. But you did what needed to be done to protect them. That's what good mothers do. Emma appeared at my elbow, tugging on my shirt. Grandpa, Jake spilled juice on your carpet. Oh no, I said dramatically. I guess we'll have to throw the carpet away and get a new one. Emma giggled. You don't really mean that. You're right, I don't. Carpets are for spilling things on. That's what makes them carpets instead of museum pieces. When Sarah left, the kids and I stood on the porch waving until her car disappeared around the corner. Then Jake looked up at me with those serious eyes that were so much like his father's. Is Mommy going to be okay, Grandpa? I knelt down so we were at eye level. Your mom is going through a hard time right now, just like I was going through a hard time for a while. But she's strong, and she loves you and Emma more than anything in the world, and that's going to help her get through it. Are you going to disappear again? The question hit me like a physical blow. No, buddy. I'm not going to disappear again. Promise. I promise. That evening, we made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs for dinner, built an elaborate blanket fort in the living room, and read 3 bedtime stories. When I tucked Jake into bed, he looked up at me with sleepy eyes. Grandpa, yeah. I'm glad you're not sad anymore. Me too, buddy. Me too. Jake's nightmare came at 2 in the morning. I woke to the sound of crying. That heartbroken wail that only comes from a child who's been torn from sleep by terrors his young mind can't process. I found him in the guest room, sitting up in bed with tears streaming down his face. Hey, buddy, I whispered, sitting on the edge of his bed. Bad dream. He nodded, hiccuping with sobs. There were monsters, and they took Daddy away. And then they came for Mommy, and I couldn't find you anywhere. My heart broke for this little boy trying to make sense of his world falling apart. It was just a dream, Jake. Mommy is safe at home, and I'm right here. But what if the monsters are real? I thought about that question, about how to be honest with a 5-year-old about the monsters that are real, divorce and abandonment, and the way adults sometimes break promises, without terrifying him further. You know what? I said, sometimes there are real monsters, but they're not the scary kind with claws and teeth. They're invisible monsters, like sadness and worry and fear. And the good news about those monsters is that love is stronger than they are. Love fights monsters. Love fights monsters. And you are surrounded by so much love, Jake. Your mom loves you. I love you. Emma loves you. That's like having an army of monster fighters. What about Daddy? The question I'd been dreading. I chose my words carefully. Your daddy loves you too, buddy. Sometimes when grown-ups are fighting their own monsters, they get confused about how to show love. But that doesn't mean the love isn't there. Is that what happened to you? Did you get confused about how to show love? Children see everything with such clarity, it's terrifying. Yes, I said quietly. That's exactly what happened to me. I was fighting the sadness monster after Grandma died, and I got so tired from fighting that I forgot how to show love properly. But you remember now? I remember now. Can you stay with me until the monsters go away? So I crawled into the narrow twin bed and held my grandson while he fell back to sleep, his small body warm against my chest. his breathing gradually slowing to the steady rhythm of peaceful dreams. And as I lay there in the dark, I thought about the conversation I'd had with Dr. Hendricks about the nature of healing. Healing isn't a destination, she'd said. It's a daily choice to engage with life instead of hiding from it. Holding Jake, feeling his complete trust in my ability to keep the monsters at bay, I understood what she meant. This was engagement. This was choosing to be present for someone who needed me, choosing to be strong enough to hold space for his fear without being consumed by my own. At breakfast the next morning, Emma was unusually quiet. She picked at her pancakes and kept glancing at me like she wanted to say something, but didn't know how. "What's on your mind, sunshine?" I asked. "Are you and Mommy fighting?" "No, sweetheart." "Why would you think that?" "Because she was crying when she dropped us off, and you looked sad when she left." I sat down next to her at the table. "Your mom and I aren't fighting. We were fighting, sort of, but that's over now. Yesterday, your mom was crying because she's worried about some grown-up things, and I looked sad because I don't like to see your mom worried." "Is she worried about Daddy?" "Among other things, yes." Emma considered this, twirling a piece of pancake around her fork. "I heard her talking to Aunt Lisa on the phone. She said Daddy might not come back." The casual way she said it, like she was discussing the weather, made it somehow more heartbreaking. Children shouldn't have to develop that kind of protective detachment so young. "How do you feel about that?" I asked. She shrugged. "Sad, I guess, but also kind of relieved. When Daddy was home, everyone was always upset. Now it's just quiet. Quiet can be good sometimes." "Yeah, but sometimes it's too quiet, and that's when I miss him." "It's okay to miss him and be relieved at the same time," I told her. "Feelings don't have to make sense. They just have to be felt." "Is that what you learned from your feelings, doctor?" "That's one of the things I learned." That afternoon, we went to the park. I pushed them on the swings and helped them across the monkey bars and found myself genuinely laughing for the first time in months. Other parents and grandparents smiled at us, and I realized I was no longer the hollow-eyed man I'd been for so long. "Grandpa," Emma said as we sat on a bench sharing a bag of goldfish crackers, "are you happy now?" It was such a simple question, but it stopped me cold. Was I happy? I thought about the past few months, the therapy sessions, the journal writing, the slow process of learning to live with grief instead of being buried by it. "I'm getting there, sunshine. I'm learning how to be happy again." "Good," she said, leaning against my shoulder. "You're more fun when you're happy." That evening, as I tucked them both into bed, Jake looked up at me with those serious eyes again. "Grandpa, when we go home tomorrow, will you still be okay?" "What do you mean? Will you still be happy, even when we're not here?" It was a question that went to the heart of everything I'd been working on in therapy, learning to find stability and contentment that didn't depend on external circumstances. "I'll miss you both terribly," I said honestly. "But yes, I'll still be okay. I've learned how to carry happiness inside me, even when I'm sad or lonely." "That's good," Emma said from the other bed. "Because we need you to be okay." "You do?" "Yeah," Jake said. "Mommy needs you to be okay too." As I turned off their light and closed the door, those words echoed in my mind. They need me to be okay. Not just present, not just functioning, but actually okay. It was a responsibility I hadn't fully grasped until that moment, that my healing wasn't just about me. It was about being strong enough to be the support system my family needed during their own crisis. Sunday morning brought sunshine and the bittersweet knowledge that Sarah would be coming to pick up the kids that afternoon. I made their favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes with whipped cream smiley faces, and listened to them chatter about their weekend adventures. "Can we come back next weekend, Grandpa?" Jake asked, his mouth full of pancake. "That's up to your mom, buddy. But I hope so." "I think she'll say yes," Emma said confidently. She seemed happier when she dropped us off than she's been in a long time. When Sarah arrived at 3 o'clock, she looked completely different from the exhausted woman who had left her children with me 2 days earlier. She was still pale, still thin, but there was something lighter about her demeanor, as if she'd put down a heavy weight. The kids ran to her immediately, both talking at once about trains and park adventures and the blanket fort we'd built. She hugged them close, and I saw tears in her eyes. But these were good tears, the kind that come from relief and gratitude. "Did you have a good weekend with Grandpa?" she asked. "The best," Emma declared. "He's fun again, Mommy. Like he used to be before Grandma died." Sarah looked at me over their heads, and I saw something I hadn't seen in months: approval. maybe even pride. While the kids gathered their things, Sarah pulled me into the kitchen. Dad, I can't thank you enough. This weekend was exactly what I needed. What did you do? I asked. I slept for 12 hours straight on Friday night. Then I went to see a lawyer. She paused, studying my reaction. I'm filing for divorce. I nodded slowly. How do you feel about that? Terrified. Relieved. Sad. Angry. She laughed shakily. All of it at once, I guess. That sounds about right. The lawyer says Mark will probably get joint custody, which means the kids will be gone every other weekend and one night during the week. I don't know how I'm going to handle that. I've never been away from them that much. You'll handle it because you're stronger than you think you are, I said. And because you won't be handling it alone. She looked at me questioningly. I'm here, Sarah. I'm really here this time. Not just physically present, but emotionally available. Whatever you need, babysitting, help with lawyers, someone to listen when you need to cry. I'm here. I was so angry at you for checking out when I needed you most, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Mom was dying, and then she was gone, and you just disappeared. I felt like I lost both my parents. The truth of that statement settled over me like a heavy blanket. You did lose both your parents, for a while. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you when you needed me. I need you now, she said simply. This whole mess with Mark, trying to raise the kids alone, dealing with lawyers and finances, and figuring out how to explain to Emma and Jake why their family is falling apart. I can't do it by myself. You don't have to. Emma appeared in the doorway. Are you guys talking about grown-up stuff? A little bit, Sarah said, quickly wiping her eyes. Is it the kind of grown-up stuff that makes people cry? Sarah and I looked at each other, and I saw a moment of panic cross her face. She'd been trying so hard to shield the children from the worst of what was happening. Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're talking about important things, I said. It doesn't always mean something bad is happening. Sometimes it means something good is starting to happen. Oh, Emma said, apparently satisfied with this explanation. Jake wants to know if we can take some of the train tracks home. Tell Jake he can take whatever he wants, I said. Those trains belong to both of you. After they left, I called Dr. Hendricks and told her about the weekend, about Sarah's revelation, about the kids' questions and fears. How do you feel about Sarah asking for your help? She asked. Grateful, I said immediately. Terrified, but grateful. I feel like I've been given a second chance to be the father and grandfather they need me to be. What makes it terrifying? The fear that I'll let them down again. That I'll fall back into old patterns when things get difficult. Frank, recovery isn't about perfection. It's about developing the tools to handle life's challenges without retreating into destructive behaviors. You've been building those tools for 3 months now. Trust yourself to use them. That night, I sat in Margaret's garden with a cup of tea instead of whiskey and thought about the weekend. Jake's nightmare and Emma's art projects and Sarah's tears and the weight of being needed again. It was overwhelming and beautiful and complicated, exactly like life was supposed to be. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm I hadn't experienced since before Margaret's illness. Sarah would call every few days, sometimes just to talk, sometimes to ask if I could pick up the kids from school or help with some household tasks that Mark used to handle. Each request felt like a small gift, a sign that she trusted me to be reliable again. The divorce proceedings moved forward with the grim efficiency of legal machinery. Mark, it turned out, was not only wanting out of the marriage, but was also planning to relocate to Seattle for a better job opportunity. This meant he was essentially walking away from regular custody, leaving Sarah as the primary parent with only occasional visits from their father. How are the kids handling it? I asked Sarah one evening as we sat on my back porch watching Emma and Jake play in the yard. Better than I expected, honestly. Jake still has nightmares sometimes, but they're less frequent. And Emma. She paused, watching our granddaughter carefully arrange flowers in a makeshift garden she'd created near Margaret's marigolds. Emma told me last week that she was glad Daddy wasn't going to live with us anymore, because everyone smiles more now. Smart kid. Sometimes I feel guilty for being relieved, Sarah admitted. Like I should be fighting harder to keep the family together. There's a difference between keeping a family together and keeping people trapped in something that's making everyone miserable, I said. You're still a family, just a different configuration. Is that what your therapist says? I laughed. That's what your mother would have said. Dr. Hendricks would probably use fancier words, but the sentiment would be the same. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the kids chase fireflies as the sun set. It was one of those perfect moments that you want to preserve in amber, when everything feels exactly as it should be. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. When you were drinking too much, when you were checked out, did you know? I mean, were you aware of how you were affecting everyone around you? I considered her question carefully. I knew I was different. I knew I was hurting. But I convinced myself that I was handling it, that my grief was private and wasn't affecting anyone else. It's amazing how good we can become at lying to ourselves when the truth is too painful to face. I think that's what happened with Mark, she said quietly. I think he knew he was unhappy, but instead of dealing with it or talking to me about it, he just started blaming me for his unhappiness. Like if he could just get away from our life, he'd magically become the person he wanted to be. People like to think that geography is the answer to problems that are actually internal, I observed. I did the same thing in a way. I tried to relocate to the bottom of a whiskey bottle. How did you find your way back? Honestly, you show me the way back. When you cut me off from the kids, it was like someone had turned on a floodlight in a dark room. I could suddenly see how far I'd drifted from the person I wanted to be. Emma ran over to us, breathless from chasing fireflies. Grandpa, why do fireflies light up? What do you think? I asked. Maybe they're trying to find each other in the dark. That's a beautiful theory, Sunshine. I think you might be right. As she ran back to continue her firefly pursuit, Sarah smiled. A real smile, the first I'd seen from her in months. She's going to be okay, I said. They both are. You're raising remarkable kids. With your help, she said. I couldn't do this without you, Dad. I know I said some harsh things. You said true things that needed to be said. There's a difference. I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. Even when I was angriest, even when I was protecting the kids from you, I never stopped hoping you'd find your way back to us. I know, sweetheart. Love doesn't disappear just because it gets complicated. As we rounded up the kids for baths and bedtime stories, I felt something I hadn't experienced in nearly 2 years: contentment. Not the desperate happiness that depends on everything going perfectly, but the quiet satisfaction that comes from being exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you're meant to do. Later that night, after Sarah and the kids had gone home, I sat down with my journal and wrote. Today I understood the difference between being needed and being wanted. For months, I thought Sarah didn't want me in their lives. But she always needed me. She just needed me to be healthy enough to be helpful instead of harmful. Tonight, for the first time since Margaret died, I felt both needed and wanted. It's a good feeling. It's worth all the work it took to get here. 6 months after Sarah had told me I couldn't see my grandchildren, we stood together in the kitchen of my house, preparing Thanksgiving dinner. Emma was carefully arranging rolls in a basket while Jake helped me baste the turkey, and Sarah was making her mother's famous stuffing recipe from memory. Grandpa, tell the story about when Daddy was little and he put cranberry sauce in his hair, Emma requested, giggling in anticipation. That was your Uncle Mike, not your dad, I corrected gently. And it wasn't cranberry sauce, it was mashed sweet potatoes. Tell it anyway. So I told the story of 5-year-old Mike Morrison's ill-fated attempt to style his hair with Thanksgiving side dishes, complete with dramatic reenactment that had both kids dissolving into laughter. Sarah smiled as she stirred the stuffing, and I caught her wiping away a tear. The past 6 months had been a journey of small steps and significant milestones. Sarah's divorce had been finalized in September, with Mark moving to Seattle as planned. He called the kids every Sunday and saw them for 2 weeks during the summer, but for all practical purposes, Sarah was raising them as a single mother. And I had become her co-parent in ways I'd never expected. I picked up the kids from school twice a week, helped with homework, attended soccer games and school plays. Sarah had moved into a smaller house just 10 minutes away, close enough that the kids could ride their bikes to my place on weekends. We'd established new traditions: Sunday morning pancakes at my house, Saturday afternoon adventures that range from hiking trails to museum visits to simply lying in the backyard making up stories about cloud shapes. Dr. Hendricks and I still met every other week, though our sessions had evolved from crisis management to maintenance and growth. You've done something remarkable, she told me recently. You've transformed a family crisis into an opportunity for deeper connection. I nearly lost them, I'd replied. But you didn't. And more importantly, you learned why you nearly lost them and made the changes necessary to ensure it won't happen again. Now, As I watched Emma carefully counting out napkins and Jake attempting to fold them into some approximation of proper placement, I marveled at how much had changed. Sarah laughed more easily. The kids seemed more secure, more confident. And I felt like myself again, but a better version. A version that had been tested by loss and emerged with greater appreciation for what remained. "Dad," Sarah said as we sat down to dinner, "would you say grace?" It was something Margaret had always done, something I'd avoided since her death because it reminded me too acutely of all the Thanksgivings when she'd sat at this same table, her head bowed as she thanked God for family and health and simple abundance. I looked around the table at these three people who meant everything to me, took a deep breath, and began. "We're grateful for this food, for this house, for the hands that prepared this meal. We're grateful for second chances and new beginnings. We're grateful for love that's strong enough to survive mistakes and misunderstandings. And we're grateful for the people who love us enough to tell us hard truths when we need to hear them." "Amen," Emma said solemnly. "Amen," echoed Jake. "Amen," whispered Sarah, reaching over to squeeze my hand. After dinner, while the kids played with their toys in the living room, Sarah and I cleaned up together in comfortable companionship. "I have something to tell you," she said as she dried a serving bowl. "Oh, I've been seeing someone. A therapist like you. Dr. Martinez. How's that going?" "Good. Hard, but good. She's helping me understand some patterns I fell into with Mark, ways I enabled his behavior because I was so afraid of conflict. She says I need to learn the difference between being supportive and being a doormat." "Your mother never had that problem," I observed. Sarah laughed. "No, she definitely didn't. Remember when you wanted to quit your job to become a professional poker player? Hey, I was good at poker. She told you that being good at something and being smart enough to make a living at it were two different things. And then she helped you figure out how to scratch that competitive itch without risking our family's financial security. She was right, as usual. I miss her so much sometimes it takes my breath away," Sarah said suddenly. "Especially during all this mess with Mark. I kept thinking about how she would have handled it, what advice she would have given me. What do you think she would have said?" Sarah smiled through her tears. "Probably that I deserved better than a man who thought parenthood was a hobby he could pick up and put down whenever it suited him. She would have been right about that too." As the evening wound down and Sarah prepared to take the kids home, Emma ran up to me with a drawing she'd made during the afternoon. It showed 4 stick figures standing in front of a house, a tall figure labeled Grandpa, a medium figure labeled Mommy, and 2 smaller figures labeled Emma and Jake. "It's our family," she explained. "It's beautiful, sunshine. I made it for you to keep, so you remember that we belong together." As I watched their car pull out of the driveway, I held Emma's drawing and felt something I'd thought was lost forever: hope. Not just for tomorrow or next weekend, but for all the years to come. Years of birthday parties and school graduations, Christmas mornings and summer vacations. The ordinary, extraordinary moments that make up a life shared with people you love. I was still a man who missed his wife every day. I was still someone who had to work consciously to maintain his sobriety and emotional health. But I was also a grandfather again, a father again, a vital part of a family that needed me to be my best self. Margaret's marigolds were still blooming in the garden, defiant in the face of the approaching winter. They reminded me of what my wife had understood all along, that beautiful things don't have to last forever to be worth the effort of creating them. Some things are worth doing simply for the joy they bring while they're here. And some things, like love and family and second chances, have a way of lasting longer than we ever dared to hope.